We are ready tonight. Welcome to the SFL Season 22 Scenario Show. We have 8 scenarios remaining. You can see in the upper left-hand corner, Scenario 1 is in yellow. That's what we'll be looking at first tonight. You can see that our first 6 seeds are locked in this season. Canton is your clear number 1 seed, undefeated unquestionably. Florida right behind them with their only blemish against the Classics a couple of weeks ago. Minnesota won the Central Division and as a division winner have the tiebreaker over DC in the 3-4 spot. Fort Worth stumbled tonight against Baltimore, but they already locked up the South Division with their victory over Houston earlier this season. And Houston is nestled in there at the 6th spot at 8-4. We'll be trying to determine which 6-6 teams still have a shot to make the playoffs. Maybe all of them do. We're not sure after the way that this week has shaken out. We have 4 of them right now on the docket: Alamo City, Mexico City, San Diego, and Atlanta. We're doing some calculations now as we get ready for the first scenario, which will see Seattle, Vancouver, and Florida win. If you've never been to this show before, we're going to go through each scenario one at a time. We'll break it down. You see the tiebreakers there at the bottom of your screen if you're not familiar with them. We don't have to break any divisional ties because the Pacific will be decided by a head-to-head or better record, as Vancouver has swept both Seattle and San Diego, so don't need to go into divisional record this evening. I have with me a smaller group of panelists, but a very good group of panelists, and it's smaller because I think we're going to get out of here pretty quickly. Our common games calculator is now in effect for the first time on the scenario show. Frank Bernstein helped Jack's Data out with that, and it is looking pretty, and we are going to be able to come up with some quicker calculations there. Jay Ballmer with a $4.99 super chat, ready to watch the scenario show and forever hate Texas teams. We'll see you in Texas, Jay, in a few months. All right, let's get to our panelists. First, it's, of course, the unquestioned leader of Jack's Data. Just ask Jack Wall, Hunter Norwood. What's going on, Hunter?
How you doing? Doing pretty good tonight.
Awesome, man. And we got Mickey Melillo along with us as well. First timer to the scenario show, making sure that he keeps us in line. What's going on, Mickey?
I'm doing well, Cam. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. And we've got Tyler Falk, too. What up, Tyler?
Hi, Cameron. How you doing?
Doing good, man. That's it?
Well, maybe. Well, I mean, I could call you Cam. I call you Kamish, but I should probably start calling you brother-in-law now, shouldn't I?
Really? How'd that happen?
No. Well, let's just say a few months ago, you introduced me to a certain sister of yours, Cassandra, and well, tonight I popped the question, and she said yes. So,
hey! Look at him go!
Congratulations, Tyler.
Thank you. Don't want to steal the show. It's a good night for football. Great to be here. But yeah, that's. It's exciting. It's exciting.
There you go, folks. Shower Tyler Falk with love in the chat. And yes, it's happening. The chat is just loads of emotions. They have no idea what to think of all that. But, man, sure is exciting. Lots of congrats for Tyler. He'll be married soon enough. All right. You can find out about all those joys. And if anybody's married in the chat, you can give him some advice, and he'll read it later. All right, so let's get to our first scenario, which would have Seattle, Vancouver, and Florida winning. Of course, Florida takes on Carolina on Monday night, and then Seattle takes on Portland. Vancouver plays Mexico City on Sunday night. So Seattle, Vancouver, Florida are your winners. And let's see, Hunter, are we ready to go?
Yeah, I'm just presetting some stuff.
Alrighty.
Yeah, you're good.
You can go ahead and copy that all in, Tyler, so we can see where we're at.
I
think it should be just a simple paste
copy
values.
Paste, yep.
Values only. Should
Mento.
should go right in. 7 through 15. You only need 7 through 15 this go around. There we go. Look at that. That's perfect. All right, so we start at the bottom. In this scenario, we would have 6, count them, 6 teams at 6 and 6, meaning 3 would get in. So looking at the strength of victories, Carolina would be at the bottom at 319. They would be out. San Diego and Mexico City would also be out at 333. We usually don't have at least 4 teams involved in common games, but let's take a look at Tulsa, Atlanta, and Alamo City. Tulsa, Atlanta, and Alamo City in our common games tiebreaker. And it looks like between those 3 teams, there are not enough common games. And it looks like Tulsa beat Atlanta and beat Alamo City. Am I reading that correct, Hunter?
Hold on one second. Yeah, it's still loading for me.
I can
These
check.
problems. Yeah, go ahead.
You're looking for Tulsa beating both Atlanta and
it looks
Alamo
like
City? Yes, can
that's
confirm.
correct. So Tulsa would have the head-to-head sweep over Atlanta and Alamo City in that case. So Tulsa would be your 10 seed. And then Atlanta did not play Alamo City. So if we take Tulsa out of the common games calculations, looks like that Atlanta would have the common games tiebreaker. They didn't play Alamo City, right? No, they did not. So, yeah, back to common games. Atlanta has the edge over Alamo City, so Atlanta would be your 11. Alamo City would be your 12. Tulsa gets the head-to-head sweep over the teams that are remaining. They would be the 10. So the Artillery sneak into the playoffs in this scenario. So Mexico City, San Diego, Carolina, you're still looking for a scenario in which 6 and 6 gets you into the playoffs. Tulsa, Atlanta, Alamo City, you can see that while your seasons have completed, that you do still have a chance to get into the playoffs. Okay, so up to the 7 and 5 teams, Vancouver would be your Pacific Division winner. They would take the 7 seed as a division winner over a non-division winner. So Vancouver would be your 7. Baltimore would be your 8 as they have a head-to-head win over Seattle, and Seattle would be your 9. So Baltimore would meet Seattle in a rematch in the 8-9 game in this scenario. Mr. Prasad, $2 super chat. Microsoft Excel scares me. Yeah, it's a bit nutty. But Vancouver gets your 7 seed as the Pacific winner. They would take on Tulsa in the first round. Atlanta would take on Houston. Fort Worth would face Alamo City in Southern Tussle. I believe that's a week 1 rematch. Of course, those two have had plenty of battles over their time. Mickey, anything that you see that looks odd or unusual here?
No, everything I see looks good on my end, Cam.
Cam, what was the tiebreaker for Atlanta Alamo City? Was that SOV as well?
It was common games. Atlanta 4 and 3 and Alamo City 2 and 5 against common opponents. And Baltimore has a head-to-head over Seattle. There you go. That looks good. All right, so there's your first scenario. Easy peasy. Thank you, Common Games Calculator. Okay, let's move to scenario 2. And we're going to put scenario 1 in green, scenario 2 in yellow. And the only difference in this is Mexico City beating Vancouver. Now, that's a big deal because that means Seattle would win the division or win the Pacific in this scenario. So we'll wait for the confirmation that that scenario is ready to go.
Standings page is refreshing.
Yeah, we're getting there.
update in real time, folks.
That should be the updated version.
Not that.
All right, so Seattle's your winner, Mexico City's your winner, Vancouver is your loser, Carolina also lost. So here we go. We still have the same amount of teams at 6-6 and 7-5. Let's see how this one shakes out. In terms of strength of victory, again, Carolina is still at the bottom. We've got San Diego and Alamo City, but here at the cut line, Vancouver and Alamo City have the exact same strength of victory, but we're going to see if Common Games applies first. We've got Tulsa, Atlanta, and Vancouver. So let's take a look here. Tulsa, Atlanta, Vancouver. There are 3 games, so Common Games would apply. That would put Atlanta under the cut line. Atlanta would be your 13 seed based on Common Games. Now, one more thing I do have to do. I have to include Alamo City in this just to see if they also have the same 3 common opponents. They do not. So Common Game opponents would not apply until we get to Vancouver, Atlanta, Tulsa, meaning that, well, actually, Hunter, at 347 SOV, we would need to figure out who was the 12.
Yeah.
In that case.
Yes.
So before we know. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say you just need common game. Check for common games between Vancouver and Alamo.
They
did not play.
Yeah, Vancouver did not play Alamo City, so we would break the tie with Common Games between just those 2 teams.
Yeah.
And that is even. 2 and 4.
So then it's Vancouver on strength of schedule.
Okay, so Vancouver would be in the... Oh my gosh, that's insane. Vancouver gets over the cut line because they didn't play Alamo City. Their common games are the same. Their strength of victory is the same, so it goes to strength of schedule, the 5th tiebreak. Vancouver played the tougher schedule, so Vancouver would have an opportunity of participating in the common games tiebreaker with Atlanta and Tulsa. Now that is that's a spicy tiebreak right there, right at the cut line. That's pretty nuts. And Atlanta loses that common games tiebreak, so Atlanta would be your 12. They would be your 12 in this. Alamo City on the cut line with SOS. Tyler, when you get a moment, put SOS versus Van in that 13 spot so we can recall those specifics. So now Tulsa and Vancouver. Did they play? I don't think they did.
They did not.
So
Negative.
once you take Atlanta out of the equation, the common games look like this. Vancouver definitely has the edge. So Vancouver goes from a strength of schedule away from being eliminated for a playoff spot to being your 10 seed, as they have common games versus Tulsa, a 4-2 versus 2-4 common games versus Tulsa. And while you're doing that, Tyler, I'll put here versus Tulsa and Vancouver on Atlanta's common games.
And guess who they play? At Seattle for Vancouver.
Oh, yeah, because that's going to be the 10-7 game. That would be a spicy rematch right there. Okay, so Tulsa is your 11. Atlanta's your 12. Because on the Vancouver Alamo City tiebreak, we had to go all the way to strength of schedule, which helped Vancouver stay alive in the tie-breaking process. Mickey, that's a mess down there. What do you see?
Oh, absolutely. What was the tiebreaker between Vancouver and Tulsa that Vancouver went over Tulsa?
Common games.
It was common games.
4-2 versus 2-4. Here's another look at it, folks, if you're looking at home. That Tulsa loss to Denver ends up hurting them. If they would have just won that game in Week 14, they would have had a fighting shot. Of course, they had some other losses in there as well. To the 7-5, Seattle's your 7 seed because they are the Pacific Division winner in this case. And Baltimore has the head-to-head over Mexico City, and that would also be a rematch from one of the best games of the season. I think Baltimore won that game 45-38 over Mexico City, and this time they would be at home. That would be your 8-9 game in this scenario. Seattle would play Vancouver in a Pacific Division rematch. That's nuts. Houston would play Tulsa, and Atlanta would take on Fort Worth, and Dunhill would be facing his former team in the playoffs. Scenario 2, full of, juicy matchups. That is nuts. Tyler, any more thoughts?
I'm just looking over everything here. Basically, if Seattle or Vancouver are to win and become the Pacific Division champs, they are automatically the 7th seed.
That's correct. Now, if both of them lose, then the Pacific Division winner is 6-6, and so they would be slotted ahead of the rest of the 6-6 pack.
There's only 2 scenarios that happens.
Correct.
For the 6 packets.
That would be 4 and 8. Okay, so that's what scenario 2 looks like. I think we can put a bow on that. Mickey, you see anything?
No, I don't see anything. You answered my one question, and nothing in the chat so far.
All right, awesome. That's that's fun right there. All right, scenario 2 is complete. We're going to jump to scenario 4. The only difference is that Portland wins instead of Seattle. They pull the upset. So scenario 4 is next. We don't want to switch 2 results around. So scenario 4 is what we're going to jump to. That'll be Seattle at 6-6.
Just waiting for it to update.
So that's now 7 6-6 teams. Goodness gracious. And Vancouver would win the division there, Tyler. It looks like they would be in the 9 spot. With a potential rematch against Mexico City looming, which they play tomorrow.
Having to play the same team back to back, that almost seems like a few years ago, Cam, our NFL teams fighting against each other like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we've seen that a couple times in SFL too, where we've just had some back-to-back, or at least I don't remember if it came to fruition or if it was just in the scenarios, but yeah, back-to-back games.
All right, you good.
Okay, perfect. All right, so 6-6 mess. We've had San Diego and Carolina have been the only ones consistently on the outside looking in at 6-6. That trend will continue. Carolina, Alamo City, and San Diego are on the outskirts. Now, Vancouver would be your division winner. So we're first going to look at Tulsa, Seattle, and Atlanta. In the common games spot. They don't have enough. In fact, they only have one common opponent. So
Look at Seattle,
Yeah.
Atlanta.
Atlanta,
Yep.
Seattle are tied. They did not play each other. Just confirming that. So Atlanta, Seattle are tied. We got to go to common games with just them. And that is advantage Seattle by 1 game. So Atlanta would be your 12 seed. And then we'll reset the deck. Tulsa and Seattle.
Seattle beat Tulsa.
Yeah, week 4. So it looks like Atlanta would be your 12.
Uncommon
Seattle
game, right?
would be your 10. Say again, Tyler?
Seattle or Atlanta eliminated or in 12 with common game.
They are 12.
Yes, they were in a tie with Seattle and then lost on common games. So it got knocked out at 12.
Yeah, they lost to Seattle on common games. That's why they're the 12. San Diego, Alamo City, Carolina are on the under the cut line. Are you looking for that record, Tyler?
Yeah, I'm looking for that record.
Okay, Atlanta common games versus Seattle. There it is, right there. Sorry, 4-2 versus 3-3.
Yep.
And Seattle beat Tulsa. They're the 10. Vancouver's at the top of that tiebreak as the Pacific leader, and then Baltimore has the head-to-head over Mexico City, which nets them the 7 seed. So in this bracket, the 8-9 is Mexico City, Vancouver, who play tomorrow. Baltimore takes Seattle on in another rematch. That's the second time we've seen that matchup. Tulsa would take on Houston. We've now seen that twice as well. And then Atlanta would go to Fort Worth. We've now seen that twice as well. Not looking good for San Diego and Carolina right now, in particular San Diego, because Carolina has another game. We'll get to the scenarios if Carolina wins on Monday night against Florida here in a little while. But San Diego's season is done, and they have not yet found the cut line. In this particular scenario, they were close, 0.014 away from being up with Seattle and Atlanta's strength of victory, but their resume falls just a little short. They really could have used Indianapolis beating Minnesota last week. That would have helped. Mickey, anything else on scenario 4?
Here's my question that I have, Cam, and it may be because this is my first show. Being that strength of victory is below common games, should we not be looking at all the 6-6 teams to see where they rank before strength of victory?
Yeah. So what I'm doing here is I'm kind of expediting the process. So if I've got a bunch of teams at 6-6, I know that the odds that all 7 of these teams have at least 3 common opponents are small. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to figure out, when does strength of victory come into play? At what point? Does that make sense? And so I'm trying to
Yes,
find.
it does.
We're organizing it by the best strength of victories, and then we're looking for how long common games can hang on as a tiebreak. And then once we've hit that moment, which in this scenario was Seattle, Tulsa, Atlanta, once we got to that point, those 3 teams didn't have enough common games, which means that if you added more teams in, it wouldn't get any better. It would only get worse. And so from that point, we can determine that all of the other 6-6 teams are going to be decided by strength of victory, because that's the next tiebreaker after common games. Does that make sense?
Makes plenty of sense. Thank you, Cam.
Yeah, that's a great question, Mickey. Yeah, we're, now that we have our common games calculator, we can much more quickly figure out when that tiebreaker is going to come into play and when it's not. Okay, so we're on to scenario 3. The only difference between 4 is that Vancouver wins instead of Mexico City. Now this is going to be interesting because Seattle so far, in the first scenario in which they lost, they still made it. They're the 10 seed. So here's another scenario in which they lose. Let's see what happens with Seattle there. Right now, Mexico City is in with a win and out with a loss, but we'll see how it continues to play out. Prasad, I would never play Call of Duty. If you beat me one-on-one on the court, maybe, but I don't think that's going to happen anymore. All right.
All right, you're good.
Portland, Vancouver, Florida. Okay, so we've got 2 7 and 5 teams. Vancouver's your 7, Baltimore's your 8. So right now Baltimore is holding on here to home field, which is what we expected we might see tonight if they got the win. Then we have the rest of this 6-6 mess that includes no division winners. So if we look by strength of victory again, we have the top teams again are Tulsa and Seattle, but then I see that we have 3 teams at 347. Let's go ahead and plug Tulsa and Atlanta back into our Common Games tiebreaker, just so we can get them on the books here. That's what that looks like. So there's 4 common opponents at the moment. I don't think I've ever come across this, Hunter. 3 teams with the same SOV? I don't think that's ever happened before.
At this point, no. I don't.
Right.
I don't think so.
Right at the cut line as well. So we first need to look at what's going on in this particular tie between Atlanta, San Diego, and Alamo City. So this could be San Diego's chance here. And look at that. Are you kidding me? They do have common games, and it's all the same. All 1 and 2 in common opponents. Atlanta, San Diego, Alamo City.
Gonna be Atlanta out on strength of schedule.
It looks like San Diego beat Atlanta, but they didn't play Alamo City. And so the head-to-head sweep cannot apply. So there's no head-to-head sweep. Common games are the same. Strength of victory is the same. And as Hunter just alluded, Atlanta, who played the worst strength of schedule, who had the worst strength of schedule and played the worst schedule, would be out on the cut line on .007 on the 5th tiebreaker. Out on strength of schedule. That's the 2nd time that strength of schedule has eliminated someone. Hunter, has strength of schedule ever eliminated anybody?
Eliminated them on the cut line?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
I don't remember it ever being that
No,
way.
because I feel like most of the cut lines have been strength of victory. At least that's what stands out to me usually.
Yeah. So, wow. So here it's San Diego. They still have a shot here. They are not totally eliminated tonight as they survive a wild tiebreak. And so now we're back to the situation where we're trying to figure out what's going on with San Diego and Alamo City. They did not play each other. Let's check their common games by deleting Atlanta. They're the same. That's wild. So, between San Diego and Alamo City, they did not play each other. Their common games record is the same. Their strength of victory is the same. So we're back to strength of schedule. Alamo City is your 12. this has got to be the most bonkers. I mean, Portland has to upset Seattle. Let's just first talk about that. But this has to be the most bonkers, like, way to determine the final seeds in the playoffs I think that we've ever seen.
And we're down to the least amount of games of breaking them down, too.
Yeah, exactly. It's just nuts. So then you go to San Diego. So now we're at San Diego, Seattle, Tulsa. See what that looks like. 0 common games. Is that a fluke?
Well, San Diego got swept by Tulsa and Seattle.
Ah, there you go.
So,
A loss to Tulsa, a loss to Seattle, but San Diego doesn't care because they're in. They're the 11 seed. But that's a head-to-head sweep loss. And then Seattle beat Tulsa, so that's a head-to-head sweep win. So Seattle's your 9, Tulsa's your 10, all based on head-to-head. So the 12 and the 13 spot have to go to the 5th tiebreaker, and the 9, 10, 11 is decided by head-to-head. That's wild. Seattle beat Tulsa. They're your 9, Tyler.
Oh.
So, San Diego's in. They would play Houston in the first round. Alamo City would play Fort Worth. It's the second time we've seen that. Tulsa would play Vancouver. Baltimore would play Seattle. That's 3 out of 4 instances where Baltimore would play Seattle in the first round.
and all at home,
Yeah.
I believe.
Yep. Yeah, Baltimore so far has clinched a first-round home playoff game. And I haven't seen any... There hasn't been a single seed that is the same team. So no one has clinched any kind of specific seed. That's not on the line tonight. Sometimes that happens where, like, the 10 seed is always somebody, depending upon what happens. Mickey, you got anything for that? That's the most bonkers scenario I think I've ever seen.
No, I followed along the entire time, and I just can't believe that we got down to a 5th tiebreaker for the second time in the first 4 scenarios so far.
Yeah, and this time, back-to-back, having to decide the 13 and the 12 spot. I don't think we've ever had to use, Hunter, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we've ever gotten to point differential, have we? As a 6th tiebreaker, I don't think we've ever had to use it.
I don't think on a live show. I think I've gotten there before on like a week 14 like horror scenario, but
yeah,
no.
All right, looking good. We're going to jump to scenario 7. Scenario 7 is next. So we're going to keep the Portland-Vancouver wins, but now we get into the scenarios where Carolina pulls the upset on Monday night. We'll wait for those tabulations. So it looks like so far Alamo City's in with a Vancouver win. Because in the 2 scenarios that Mexico City won, Alamo City is out. We'll see if that continues to play out.
Does this mean we have to break 3 10-2 teams for the first time?
Well, really 2 because DC didn't win the division.
Correct. And
They didn't play.
Florida won common games over Minnesota. 5-0 versus 3-2, so we don't have to do anything.
Okay.
It is all.
Oh yeah, they
set.
already clinched.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's there. All right, you should be.
Hey Johnny,
good in
we're
2
happy that you're here.
Copying over.
68 viewers right now. It's pretty great for past midnight on the East Coast. I'd say the SFL is alive and well.
You are good when you're ready.
All right. Yeah, with Carolina getting the win, that's really going to cause problems for teams like San Diego and Alamo City. All right, we've got all of our teams. Baltimore, Carolina at the 8-9 spot. We'll see what that's all about coming up. All right, we got 6 and 6 teams again. And it's back to, there's a clear-cut line here. Mexico City, Alamo City, San Diego fall under the cut line. So here again, Atlanta is in. Atlanta has been in 4 of the 5 scenarios so far. How about that? The Swarm looking pretty good right now. We have a tie again at SOV between Seattle and Atlanta. Seattle beat them, right? We already talked about that.
I don't believe so. Doesn't look like they did.
Right. Common games. Seattle, Atlanta. Seattle with the 1-game edge. Looks like Atlanta's lost to San Diego and Tulsa hurt them in the end. So Seattle's going to be your...
Ten seed.
And then they beat Tulsa.
Yeah.
Okay, so Atlanta's your 12. Seattle's your 10 because they beat Tulsa. Tulsa's your 11. Tyler, in your notes, put that put SOV tie with Seattle in the Atlanta column because that's how we ended up with. Well, no, you. In addition to what you already had, should have said
Okay.
that. Should have specified. Seattle had a SOV tie with Atlanta, and then they had a common games loss to. Let's see if I got that right. That's tricky.
Seattle had the common games win over Atlanta, I believe is what we just saw.
Correct.
Correct.
And Seattle had a SOV tie with Atlanta.
Yeah, SOV tie, common games win to break the tie, and then head to head.
Atlanta had a SOV tie with Seattle. Common Games broke that tie. That's it. I think you got it. Yeah. SOV tie, Common Games lost to Seattle. That's correct. And then Seattle had to head over Tulsa. Okay, perfect. Boy, Atlanta-Fort Worth looking like a real possibility. Okay, and then we've got a new one here. Baltimore-Carolina at the 8-9. I don't think they played.
They did not.
So? Ooh, one game. One game difference there. Baltimore wins on common games, and Baltimore keeps the home game. So Baltimore common games over Carolina. That's a 3-2 versus 2-3 record. And that determines that Carolina goes on the road. But Carolina's in the playoffs.
3-2 versus 2-3.
Yes. And Vancouver's your division winner. So we got Baltimore, Carolina, Vancouver, Seattle, Tulsa, Houston, Fort Worth, Atlanta. Some very familiar matchups. Okay, let's go to scenario 8, where the difference is that Mexico City wins instead of Vancouver. If I was Houston right now, I'd be like, oh my gosh, we got to play Gabriel Manning. Please no. And by the way, speaking of that, Tulsa has not yet had a scenario in which they have been eliminated. Tulsa could end up still being in the playoffs despite their loss to Denver in Week 14 when this night is over. Portland, Mexico City, Carolina is what we are tabulating right now.
All right, you should be good.
All right, so we have 3 teams at 7 and 5, 6 teams at 6 and 6. All right, looks like Vancouver at the 10 seed would be your Pacific winner. So then we have 5, 6 and 6 teams to break the tie with once we get to Vancouver out of there. All right, it looks like there's a clear-cut line on SOV, but first we're going to go Tulsa, Atlanta, Seattle. Now, we've been there before.
I believe it's only 2 games.
That doesn't take very long for us to just type it in again. But I think you're right. How great is this Common Games calculator, huh?
I know. And it was so easy. I mean, it takes work, but
This is the first scenario in which Seattle is eliminated.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, so they don't have enough common opponents, so there you go. Seattle can miss the playoffs. They would be out on SOV. So Seattle has not clinched a playoff spot, but there Tulsa is again surviving one more time. We've got Tulsa and Atlanta, and Atlanta lost to Tulsa. So Tulsa is your 11 seed on head-to-head. That cleans that up pretty quick. So Seattle, you have not clinched a playoff spot. Tulsa's still in the best position. Yeah, there you're 12. There we go. Okay, so now we got Mexico City in the mix. Mexico City, Carolina, Baltimore. Now, Baltimore beat Mexico City, but that doesn't apply because Baltimore did not play Carolina. So we're back to a potential common games. Now, we know that Baltimore and Mexico City had just enough. And we're going to include now Carolina in the mix. And that looks like a Baltimore common games. They survive, at least for the moment. Survive and advance. So now Mexico City and Carolina have to break their tie. They did not play this season. So common games is in favor of Carolina 5-2 versus 4-3. So Mexico City is your 9, and Baltimore is your 7, based on the common games that we had in scenario 7, Tyler. So the exact same tie break there. But Mexico City. So, yeah, this is going to be kind of complex to put in.
The first one is a common game win 5-2 over 4-3 over Mexico City.
What was
And
the
it's the same common game.
what was the
go ahead,
common
Hunter.
games record for Baltimore, Carolina, Mexico City?
It was Baltimore 3-0, Mexico City 1-2, and Carolina 1-2.
Okay. And then did we look at common games between Carolina and Mexico to break the common games tie?
Correct. That is 5-2 versus 4-3 Carolina.
Okay.
And then Tyler, you can put that for Mexico City. You can put common games loss versus Carolina, Baltimore, I guess, because they lost both those tiebreakers. Yeah, there you go. So Carolina gets a home game. How about that? Carolina would play Mexico City in the 8-9. Baltimore would play Vancouver in the 7-10. Houston faces Atlanta, and Tulsa goes to Fort Worth. That's different. So if you're in Seattle, San Diego, Alamo City, you really want Florida to take care of business, because once Carolina gets to 7-5, you guys are basically the ones that take the bullet. At least thus far. Mickey, anything else on 8 or otherwise?
No, everything looks good. It was that 7-5 scenario right there, but it got laid out pretty good.
With scenario 8, it's Atlanta at 12, correct? Because Atlanta lost to Tulsa. Or I thought we had something there. Because
Atlanta lost to Tulsa. Yeah, they would be flipped, Tyler, I think.
Which ones?
Tulsa should be 11, and Atlanta should be 12 in scenario 8, because Tulsa beat Atlanta head-to-head. I think we determined that earlier, but we just had the teams flipped. Good eye, Hunter.
Mm-hmm. I heard you say Tulsa versus Fort Worth, and I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah. So we're back to the same thing: Tulsa, Houston, Fort Worth, Atlanta, which we have seen almost exclusively tonight. Only when Vancouver and Florida win has that scenario not played out. Okay, so that's 8. So now we're going to go to 6. So 6 has Seattle winning instead of Portland. Before we leave the show tonight, we will be breaking down each team and what they would need for different situations. For those of you asking about your specifics of your team situation in the chat. Seattle, Mexico City, Carolina with a win. We're tabulating that now.
All right, you're good.
Just want to say that Seattle losing to Portland on the final week of the season and potentially being eliminated would be a crazy way to go.
What a way to go out for Portland.
Yeah. Yeah. So in this scenario, we have 4 7 and 5 teams. Only 2 6 and 6 teams would make it. We've got a clear-cut line of SOV as long as head-to-head does not come into play. So let's go Tulsa, Atlanta.
Vancouver, Alamo City, because they have this. We have to combine all 4. Same SOV for Van and ACA.
That's true. Let's see. Okay, well, we do have... Go ahead, Hunter.
I was just going to say, I'd break that tie first.
Yeah, we have to break
And
this
then
down first.
add it into Tulsa, Atlanta.
Vancouver did not play Alamo City, so we're going to have to...
I mean, I guess you could add all 4 to the common games, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, that's tied, but you're right. Let's just see.
I thought Tulsa, Atlanta, Alamo was like 3 games at that. So
Yeah, it does not apply at that point. So back to breaking the Alamo City Vancouver tie. Their common games are the same: 2 and 4 versus 2 and 4. So
Try to schedule victory for Vancouver.
yeah, so Vancouver moves on to at least compete at the cut line with Tulsa and Atlanta. And that looks like that. Atlanta is out. Atlanta is out in the Van, Atlanta, Tulsa 3-way tie. Atlanta is out. Vancouver did not play Atlanta or Tulsa. Atlanta lost to Tulsa, but there's no head-to-head sweep loss there. So Atlanta's out on common games. That is what kills them on that cut line.
Versus all 3 of them. Versus Tulsa and...
Correct. Yeah, they have the worst of the 3. And so then it's down. So Tulsa survives again. Then it's down to common games between Tulsa and Vancouver, and that looks like this. Vancouver. Clearly. So Vancouver's your 11. Tulsa is your 12. Tulsa's in. Again. We may get to see the 3rd highest scoring offense after all. All right, so Vancouver beats, there you go, 2 and 4 versus 4 and 2. Yeah, and Atlanta lost common games. Okay, the 3-way tie between Mexico City, Carolina, Baltimore should be the same as scenario 8. Mexico City has a common games loss to Carolina and Baltimore. And Baltimore has a common games win over Carolina. I'll help out. Bam. That look right, Tyler?
Yes.
Mickey, see anything?
No, everything looks good.
Also, as Farnsworth points out in the chat, there's not been a scenario in which Vancouver has been out either. So it looks like the Legion may have clinched. Obviously, winning the division is the difference between having a home playoff game and not at this point. We'll get to more of that here in just a little bit. Final scenario, scenario 6. The only difference is Vancouver beating Mexico City. So Atlanta's out in 2 scenarios. essentially the total opposite scenarios. Either if Seattle, Mexico City, and Carolina all win, or if Portland, Vancouver, and Florida all win. It's kind of bizarre. Looks like they have a 75% chance of making it. Six, Seattle, Vancouver, Carolina.
All right, you're good.
Awesome. Thank you, Hunter. All right. We have 5 teams at 6 and 6. Tulsa, Atlanta, Alamo City. They don't have enough. So common games cannot apply. Only 2 common opponents, which means that Alamo City would be out on strength of victory. That leaves just Tulsa and Atlanta, and Tulsa beat Atlanta. So they are your 11. That's also in scenario 8. That game happened in week 6. Tulsa's in the playoffs. Now, Baltimore, Carolina, Seattle. I feel like we saw that earlier. No,
We
I
saw
guess
Mexico
didn't.
City, Carolina, Seattle.
Yeah, we did not see that. Okay, so Baltimore, Carolina, Seattle. That is nothing. They do not share enough common opponents. You need at least 3. So, where we at? Right here. Seattle would be your 10 on strength of victory. And then Baltimore has the common games over Carolina. That's from scenario 8. Okay. In that case, Carolina goes to Baltimore. So if Carolina wins, they have a 75% chance of playing Baltimore in the first round. In one scenario... Oh, no, that would all be on the road. The best scenario for Carolina is the 8 seed. And that's if they get 2 major upsets, Portland and Carolina winning. And then Carolina will be your 8. All right, so let's break this down by team. Let's start with Vancouver first. Oh, gosh, Texas. All right, Vancouver has clinched a playoff spot. It looks like that with a win, they are the 7 seed. And with a loss, they are the 10.
11. I saw them 11 somewhere. 11 scenario 6.
So it looks like they're the 10, 11, 10,
9 scenario
9. So 9 through 11 with a loss. Sec.
Yuki with the $5 super chat. By the grace of God, we made it. Either playing Fort Worth, Houston, or Van. Ada?
Nice. Okay, there we go. Just wanted to fix my formatting there. All right. Tulsa. They have clinched. And they could be the 10, 11, or 12. There's only one scenario in which they would be the 12. Just trying to see if there's any consistency.
Although scenario 8 as well. No, I'm sorry. That's 11. I apologize.
Yeah, they're mostly the 11, but there doesn't seem to be much consistency on what makes them 11. So, yeah, they're in the playoffs, but they'll be on the road. 499 super chat from Jay Ballmer. Can't wait to see all the Texas teams lose in the playoffs. You gotta love Jay. I don't know how much y'all got to hang out with Jay at the last convention, but he's a good guy. All right. So Vancouver and Tulsa.
Got smacked by Brett during the flag football game.
Yeah, he did get smacked. Vancouver and Tulsa are in. Now let's talk about who is out. That's nobody, right?
Yeah, the teams there are teams that play this upcoming 24 hours that can still make the playoffs or get out. Yeah.
Yeah. So San Diego right now, they have a 12.5% chance. Is that right? One scenario. That's scenario 3.
Confirmed.
So
Yeah.
they need Portland, Vancouver, Florida wins to make the playoffs. Okay.
Lanes need the boats to something for them. That's unheard of.
Yeah, true. Let's talk Alamo City
rivalry.
here because their hopes are a little bit better. They have a 25% chance of making the playoffs. That's scenario 3 and scenario 1. So they need Vancouver and Florida to win. So San Diego has to have the massive upset. Alamo City doesn't need that. Seattle can take care of business, and as long as Vancouver and Florida both win, which is that game in Vancouver tomorrow?
Yes.
Yeah, so I would say that's probably the most likely scenario is that Vancouver and Florida wins, which in that case Alamo City is in. But it's hard to get two things to happen. So that's a look at Alamo City and San Diego's chances. We know about Carolina and Mexico City. That's just winning in. Carolina can get the 8 seed with Portland, Mexico City wins as well. Otherwise, they are the 9 and going to Baltimore. I think they'd much rather take on Mexico City at home than go to Baltimore. That would be nice. And then Mexico City is also a 50% chance. They are winning in. Let's take a look at if they win. That's 2, 4, 6, and 8. They would be the 9, 8, 10, or 9. They are number 8 with Portland and Florida wins. That's scenario 4. So Mexico City still has a shot at a home playoff game. Carolina still has a shot at a home playoff game. San Diego and Alamo City still have a shot at making the playoffs. So let's go to the other side of the board. Let's talk about some of the teams that have almost clinched. That's Seattle. 87.5% chance they are in the playoffs. The only time they miss is scenario 8. So they are out with Portland, Mexico City, and Carolina wins. Basically, Seattle misses the playoffs if we have 3 upsets in the last 3 games of the season. How many of y'all think that's plausible?
Anything's plausible in the SFL.
Who else? Baltimore's in. Well, they clinched. They're a 7, 8. It looks like they're a 7 in scenario 4 or 8. So they can get the number 7 with Portland and Mexico City wins. Otherwise, they'll be the 8. So we're heading to Baltimore in the first round, along with Houston and Fort Worth. Who else is out there?
Did we talk Atlanta?
Nope. Atlanta. They are out in 2 scenarios, so they have a 75% chance of making the playoffs. What a big win for them to blow out Charleston in that last game of the season. So they are out either with Portland, Van, and Florida wins, or Seattle, Mexico City, and Carolina wins. But otherwise, they're good to go. And that's it. Those are your 9 teams. Let's see. There we go. Okay. What do we think?
I think that common games tool, massive help.
1 hour and 10 minutes. Not bad.
This would have taken 2 hours without it.
And it would have taken longer with Hunter not present as well. So thanks to Hunter for helping to be the cheat sheet whiz.
Yes. I was going to say, I think Atlanta's going to be sweating the most. Because they don't play. The first game's not going to really tell them anything. It's just going to tell them who else they need to win or lose.
That's interesting. Yeah. So that first block, Portland. So let's say that Seattle wins, right? Well, now they need Vancouver to win. And if that happens, then they're in, right? But if Seattle and Mexico City wins, or Portland and Vancouver wins, then yeah, they're going in to Monday night with a 50-50 shot of not being in. And that's what we talk about with Carolina, where no matter how you slice it, there's going to be a situation on Monday night where if Carolina wins, they're going to take a spot from someone. And if Carolina loses, then someone's going to make the playoffs, right? So there's big-time ramifications in that game, and you can see over on your right side that Seattle could potentially be out if Carolina wins. Atlanta could be potentially out if Carolina wins. And so those are the teams, to your point, Hunter, those 2 teams right there, those are the ones that could potentially be sweating it if those scenarios play out that way. But yeah, San Diego, basically they need a miracle. Alamo City, it's a 25% chance, but I think it's a pretty good 25% chance. Just need Vancouver and Florida to take care of business at home. Carolina and Mexico City control their own destinies. I think Tulsa, gents, is your big winner tonight. They're in at 6-6. So, and Vancouver as well. Vancouver now doesn't have to sweat winning the division or potentially being out of the playoffs. So any
Lots to play for.
any other thoughts?
3 games of the season is going to be a hectic, wild ride.
All I know is if Portland keeps that game close against Seattle, it's going to be a lot of people sweating. Because that's the one game on the schedule where it's like, okay, that should be a no-brainer, right? But Hunter, didn't you think that about Tulsa, Denver, too? At the start of the week? I did. I was like, okay, well, Tulsa's been killing it lately, and they just...
But you have to remember that Vega came back like 2 weeks ago.
Right.
So he's been getting comfortable now.
Yeah, and the Portland situation is a little bit different because they're done. So
right,
they're essentially a lame duck opponent for Seattle to win and clinch a playoff spot. So
yeah, and I feel like Mighty and Florida and Art would want to win the game versus Carolina, but also they had the 2 seed locked up. Like, you don't really have to win this game.
Yeah, true.
Florida.
True. They could throw out a dummy playbook, right? I mean,
right.
Who knows? I think I'm most interested when you look at the semifinals. You look at quite possibly DC taking on Canton again. Minnesota, who did not play Canton this season, dodges them again. They're on the opposite side of the bracket of them. So that's interesting. I think, I don't know about you guys. I mean, Florida's a very good team, but I could honestly see Minnesota playing Canton in that title game, right? They've been awesome as of late.
Yeah, and they didn't play. Florida and Minnesota didn't play either.
Yeah.
So yeah, we haven't seen what they played last year, I think, or last season.
Yes.
That might have. Okay.
Yeah, Mickey would know. So either way, I mean that's exciting. Minnesota has never won a playoff game. They're going to have a bye, and they're going to be playing in the quarterfinals. If all of the favorites win their games, they would be playing Houston in a 3-6 matchup.
We have the BJ Demond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Baltimore is quite scary. Whoever Baltimore draws in the quarterfinal, look out, right? Just looking at the potential matchups, that could be Canton, that could be Florida, that could be Minnesota, who Minnesota's already lost to Baltimore. Baltimore is definitely a scary team in there. And then, who knows, guys? If Mexico City gets in, I mean, sometimes their offense just goes nuts. They could be a problem. They would play either Seattle, Carolina, Vancouver, or Baltimore. So Mexico City has 4 different potential opponents they'd match up with if they were to win against Vancouver. So very interesting.
Tulsa's a very strong opponent too, even though they're at the bottom of the seedings.
Yeah,
They'd be a tough opponent to play, even just in the wild card.
it's kind of Tulsa is kind of weird to me. Tyler, doesn't it feel like it just kind of depends on the matchup? Like sometimes they just don't have it, and then other times it just seems like whoever's playing against them is just having all kinds of problems.
I mean, these last 2 weeks have been nuts for Tulsa. Gabriel Manning, nuts in the first 12 minutes of a game last week, and then this week he just gets.
He was shut down.
It's either if Gabe Manning's on his game, Tulsa's Tulsa has a good shot. If Gabe Manning, they live and die by Gabe Manning. It's as simple as that.
Seattle-Baltimore is an interesting rematch because that game had a ton of controversy in it. It was a Monday night game, I think, back in week 2 or 3. I wonder if Seattle would learn from their mistakes because they did not handle the blitz well at all in that game. So what would we see from both of those teams in that rematch would be interesting. I also think it's kind of strange, guys. Fort Worth had that game against Mexico City where Marcus Dunhill went crazy. He set the SFL record for most rushing yards by a quarterback in a game. We really haven't seen a ton of rushing out of him since. He did have a rushing touchdown tonight against Baltimore on a quarterback draw, but it's almost like they're keeping him under wraps. I think depending upon the matchup that Fort Worth gets, it'd be interesting to see them unleash him again. It looks like in most scenarios, I count 5. They would play Atlanta in the first round, but they also could play Tulsa, and they also could play Alamo City too. Fort Worth, Alamo City would be pretty attractive. So, all right, well, I think that's about it for the scenario show here on SFL YouTube. We've got it all broken down. We know what's happening. Congrats to Tulsa and Vancouver and Baltimore. You are in to the playoffs, and for now we have 6 teams fighting for 3 spots. We'll see what happens. Any final thoughts, guys?
Nothing for me.
Nothing.
Great job all around.
All right.
Yeah, nothing on my end either.
Awesome stuff. All right, thanks everybody for joining us tonight. It's been a long day. Y'all have a great evening, and we'll see you tomorrow night.